span acting. I used to do Civil War reenacting, and a matter of fact, this year's the 30th anniversary of the movie of Gettysburg, the making, and Dad and I were both in it as background artists. And we both have prominent, you can see us. Dad, you can see Dad walking to the camera, and then panning back, you see his rear end walking away. It's kind of funny. And then you'll see me sitting down. I stand up and salute General Longstreet when he's riding his horse down the field. So that was quite the experience. So yeah, this year's the 30th anniversary. They're going to have a Gettysburg. Yeah, they're going to have a big thing going on.
How are you all?
Awesome. We were looking for you.
Well, I'm glad you found me.
Good.
You're a nice, lively bunch. We don't get a lot of visitors here.
I'm sorry we woke you up.
I need to wake up every now and then. My name's John Bressler. I moved out here with my wife Anna from Illinois in 1876. We'd already been blessed when we moved out here, so we already had a baby girl. When we got here, the same year that Colorado became a state actually, we were continued to be blessed. We had 2 more baby girls. We had 5 baby boys, so a nice small family I had to provide for. And so as you can imagine, I got to do all sorts of different jobs. For a while I drove, well actually I didn't just drive a wagon, I was in charge of a whole string of wagons about this size, and we'd haul freight from the railroad depot there in Los Animas 500 miles down to Fort Sill Indian Territory. That was after the days of the Indian Wars, so a lot of the folks that used to live around here, Cheyenne and Arapaho, they were on the reservations there with the Army, and so we delivered supplies to both of them. And so after that, for a while I drove a buggy delivering mail all over Bent County. For a while after that, if you can believe it or not, I ran a soft water company, and then the people around here liked me enough, they made me a deputy sheriff for 2 years in the 1880s. So I had a pretty good life, a pretty normal life I think it was, although it did get lively at times. Probably the most lively times was one of the most painful, and it was back in my freight wagon days. So we were almost to the end of the trip. We were within sight of Fort Sill, and I saw a 16-year-old Indian boy out there shooting his bow and arrow at targets. And I was kind of admiring it because he hit that target every single time. And so I kept on driving by. All of a sudden, I get this awful pain in the back of my neck. And before I could figure out what's happening, I hear fellas behind me on the wagon saying, "Don't shoot him, don't shoot him, it was an accident. That arrow ricocheted off of the target." So by pure dumb luck or bad luck, however you want to look at it, I ended up with the arrow in my neck after the Indian Wars were over. And so the soldiers there at Fort Sill, they took me into the hospital there. It was nice and welcoming, a nice cold stone building, which got me a little bit worried. But they put me up on a table. Have any of you ever had to deal with Army surgeons? No. I don't recommend it. They decided to work on me without chloroform, without ether, and they start poking and prodding. That arrow shaft, the wooden part snaps off, and they start cutting, and I hear them cussing, and I'm thinking something along the same lines. I said, "John, this isn't a good fix to be in." So I jumped off of that table, and I gave them a few choice words that I won't repeat with you all here in the audience. I wrapped a bandage around my neck, I jumped back in my wagon, and I drove it all the way back here to Los Animas. Do you all want some free advice? If you carry a pocket knife on you, always make sure it's clean and make sure it's sharp. Because when I got home, I got in front of my mirror, I used that pocket knife, and I cut out this arrowhead, and I carry it on me to this day.
Oh, wow.
So in all my days, I was a deputy sheriff, like I mentioned, for 2 years. We won't go into why they didn't want me back for a 3rd year. But in my jail, that jail that's still there, south of the courthouse, that old stone building, I had some bad men, I had some real hard cases, I even had some genuine outlaws. Not a single one of them hurt me as bad as that 16-year-old Indian boy. To this day, I continue to wear a beard to cover up those scars on my neck. We appreciate you all coming out to visit us. I rest right over there. You can see the wagon wheel on my headstone. We don't get visitors as much as we'd like, so we appreciate you coming out, but if you do get the chance, come out and see us a little more often.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was born in Maryland in 1837. When I was 20, I joined the infantry and was quickly sent to Utah to deal with the Mormon troubles that were happening at the time. I must have marched 3,000 miles my first year of the military. It's a lot of walking that year. The ironic thing is, by the time we arrived, the conflict was over. The Mormon troubles had been resolved. So we ended up going down into Nevada to help defend the settlers in that area. We were there until the Confederates came in and captured about 1,000 of us. We ended up getting shipped back east. And I eventually was part of a prisoner exchange. By that time, I was a sergeant. After the prisoner exchange, I served under General Burnside. I fought in both Antietam and Gettysburg. Many good men, many men that I knew, went into those battles and never came back. And many more went into those battles and came back with fewer limbs than they entered. But I was fortunate. I came out pretty much unscathed. After my time in the war, I helped ship about 4,000 cattle out west, out to Fort Union in the New Mexico territory. Along the way, we got attacked by some Kiowa. We had to repulse them. That was some excitement. And along the way, when we stopped in Fort Lyon, we met a man by the name of James Prowers, who we actually ended up selling about 200 head of cattle to. We ended up dropping off the cattle in New Mexico, and funny enough, the winter after we dropped them off, cattle died. But by that time, they were out of my hands. I ended up shipping freight for quite a while, taking shipments from the railroad to the local communities. Moved to Kit Carson about 1870. Met my wife Annie. We got married in 1875. Eventually, we moved to the Los Animas area about 1902. Bought a farm. Eventually, I bought a hotel and a butcher shop as well. Had a full life here. Had a full life. Had eight little rascals. Eventually, time takes us all. And when I was 96, I was the oldest man in the community at the time. And at 96, I died. And they buried me right there. Later on, my wife joined me. That is my story. Now, there are many other stories for you to experience here in the cemetery. I wish you well as you do.
Thank you.
The resting place of John Prowers and his family. And then right here, on the corner right here of 6th and whatever that is, that tall monument, that's William Ben's headstone there. There's his brother Charles, that's buried in Mexico. Are you guys enjoying this warm winter December evening here?
We're doing good. Did we
You
do
good
something
enjoying the
wrong?
dance?
Did we do something wrong?
No, you guys didn't do anything wrong. Unfortunately, while you guys are inside this Olympic dance hall and saloon, we have our Clay and John Allison brothers. It's a big dance hall, so you may or may not come, but they're waving their guns around, stomping on your feet, on the other dancers' feet. You know, we can't have that. You know, for those of you who are from Los Angeles, you know we have a no gun policy in town. You can't be carrying them through there. For those of you guys, you may have heard rumors on Clay. You know, he's a shadowy figure. You know, he's actually killed folks before. You know, he's actually a drifter coming from back east. He's heading down to New Mexico, and you know, so he actually was kicked out of the Confederate Army. You know, he tried to enlist, they wouldn't let him in, you know, because he had some
some type of mental issue. He ended up serving with Bedford Forest, but that might tell you something. He's not afraid to kill. So I need to actually take care of this. He wouldn't listen to me, so I'm gonna have to go enlist some help. You just give me a minute. I'm gonna take care of it. That way you can enjoy the rest of your dance. Just give me a minute. I'll be right back. Unfortunately, things did not go quite as planned as I expected. I thought with myself and my two deputized individuals we could take care of it. As I walked into the dance hall, someone yelled, "Look out!" I got one shot off. I got one of the two. I believe it's John, but I was shot about 4 times in the chest, so I'm not quite sure if I got him or the other, or if I got both. And do you guys know if I got both of them? No? Yeah, not sure. Well, hopefully I got both of them. But I know I got at least one. Hopefully, he's taken care of for good. But it's hard to tell after you've been shot yourself. Hopefully, the other one, I think would be kind of poetic justice if he dies in a wagon accident. All I know is I'm buried. You see that cowboy hat over there? There's a rose bush on the other side of the fence. It's an unmarked grave. That's what I've been told. It's been it's been a while over. Trying to get an exact location. So if you guys here too, if you know that it is the exact location, please let me know. That way I can rest in peace. All right, so it's December 21st. We got Christmas coming up when you enjoy, and I heard 1877 is going to be a good year for you. So enjoy the rest of your dance.
Yeah.
I think Easter's come and gone. Is this for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know about Easter, but actually I was here to visit the grave of a loved one. Perhaps you are here at the cemetery today for the same reason. You must have dearly departed ones here. I'm sorry for your loss. But I'm walking to visit the grave of my little boy, Juan Vasquez, who's buried here. He died. He was riding here and he had an accident with his horse and he was struck to death. Sorry. But Mrs. Boggs, she's always been so kind to our family. And she let us bury him here. The first burials here back in 1839. And you can see his grave is there. People still remember him with kindness and love in their hearts, and they bring him gifts and toys. And there's even a little iron bed around his grave. And I've heard that Mrs. Boggs comes out here just almost as often as I do to visit my little Juan. And I've wondered perhaps if she's the one who gave him the gift of the iron bed to help him in his eternal rest. But excuse me just a moment. I wasn't really expecting a message. I need to see what this is. Oh no. Dear Madam, we regret to inform you that recent research indicates the story of Juan Vasquez cannot be true. You say he was buried in 1839. However, Mrs. Romalda Boggs, who donated land for the cemetery and reportedly visited the grave often, did not arrive in Colorado until 1861. Oh, this is embarrassing. This would have been nice to have known yesterday. She was only 8 years old and living in Santa Fe, New Mexico in 1839. An examination of the handwritten records in the cemetery office indicates Juan Vasquez was not born until 1863 and he died in 1939 at age 75. His funeral records show he was a common laborer at the time. We do not know the origin of the story about the horse, nor how the iron bed became part of the legend. But we would be grateful if you would help us stop the spread of this false information. We apologize for the anguish and dismay this discovery may cause you. Sincerely, the Bent County Los Angeles Cemetery Board of Directors. I'm walking to visit the Please excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and continue on to his grave. I wish you well. I'm going to bring him his toy wagon.
Is George Byron Wick, and here I am a Bend County Democrat. I was the publisher for many years, but it all started on February 6th, 1854 in Putney, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born. I learned the printing business and the publishing business as the editor of the Clarion, Pennsylvania Democrat. Now, while I worked at the Democrat, I had kind of a hero in the publishing business. His name was Horace Greeley. You remember Horace Greeley? Well, you're from Colorado, so you have a town named after him. And that town has a newspaper named after him called the Greeley Tribune. And under the header of the Greeley Tribune, to this day, it says, "Go West, young man." Well, I listened to Horace Greeley when I read those words in the 1800s, and I went west. I found myself in the Wyoming Territory on March 22nd, 1886. From Wyoming, I moved to a town called Walsenburg, Colorado. And in Walsenburg, Colorado, I bought a half interest in the Walsenburg Cactus newspaper, and also a third interest in the Trinidad Advertiser, which I had an interest for about 3 months. Now, when I was in Walsenburg and Trinidad area, I kind of fell in love with the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And in fact, two of the mountains I specifically enjoyed were the two most beautiful mountains in the state of Colorado. Those are the Spanish Peaks. And you can tell them that George Wick told you those were the two most beautiful mountains in the state of Colorado, those Spanish Peaks. I was in Walsenburg for about 11 years. In 1899, I headed to Los Animas, Colorado, where H.H. Clark and I took over the Bend County Democrat. I ran the Bend County Democrat from 1899 to 1930, which time I retired from the publishing business in 1930. But during those years, I did some other things as well. In 1901, Governor Orman appointed me the water commissioner for the state of Colorado. I served for 1 year as the water commissioner. In 1916, I was the postmaster for the city of Los Animas for 6 years. But that wasn't the most interesting thing. As a young man, I always dreamed of going west, which I did. But as a miner in the gold rush, that's really what my dream was. And so in 1900, I'd already purchased the Democrat. In 1900, I took off for Alaska. And I ended up in the Klondike, where I tried my hand at gold mining, trying to win it big in the gold rush. Well, I wasn't very successful. Ended up back in Los Animas. But while I was in Alaska, the folks there said that I was the most generous man in the state of Alaska. And the reason they said that is they said I gave away more money than I kept for my own needs. And the story goes that I'd run into this young woman with her brood of children. Her husband had headed off to the interior of Alaska to mine himself, and he never returned. She didn't have enough money to give them good clothes or to even really feed them. So I told her, I said, hold out your hands. And I reached into my pockets and pulled out all my silver dollars. Just started dropping them in her hands until they started dropping off into the snow. And so I guess that's why they called me the most generous man, because I gave away all my money. Well, as I said, I retired in 1930 from the newspaper business. In 1940, although I owned a home in Los Animas, I found myself living at the Deluxe Auto Camp in Los Animas. So you might have heard of that. That was in 1940. About a year and a half later, I moved in with my pastor and his wife, S.S. Wilson, Reverend and Mrs. And in 1942, I died in my sleep. I was never married, but I was a friend to all.
My name's George Wick. Thank you for listening.
George, I have one question for you. Where exactly was that auto park located at, you know?
Well, you know, having been dead since 1942, I can't remember. That's a good question. Go to the museum and they'll have the answer. All right, thank you, George. You asked.
I had the same question. Thanks for asking.
Wasn't there a park like